Hello everyone and welcome back for another Miss Ink Stamps video. I'm Cassie. Today we're going to be making a gatefold card, but let's talk about what we're using today. I have this really adorable It's a Trap stamp set. I love the snarkiness of some of these Miss Ink stamps, and that one is one of my favorites now. We also have the Everyday Sentiments. We're going to make this a birthday card. And then I am bringing in the Tiki Square stencil. I'm going to bring in another stencil later, but we'll start with that. So I've got a piece of scrapbook.com mixed media paper. It's really great for obviously mixed media. It's one of my favorites. And I've brought in this little mat. I've brought in some distress inks. We're using bundled sage and we are using some Shabby shutters. And I am just ink smushing. You know, I've put that down on that mat, hit it with some water, and I'm smushing my paper right into it, drying it in between. I want this to be nice and textured, but I really chose some light colors because we're going to do something that I like to call underpainting. I've done this before. That's what it looks like. I think I did that about 3 times with the smushing. Made sure it was nice and dry with my heat tool before I put it into my little mini misty. And then we're going to take our image, which is that Venus flytrap, and we are going to stamp that down on top of our background. And so it really leaves this really cool look of, well, an underpainting, because we're going to do some more painting on top of it. So I'm using VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. It's a black pigment ink, perfect for watercolor. So I'll stamp that down. It does a really good job of stamping that first time, so I don't need to stamp it again. And then I'm going to bring in a few more distress ink colors. That first color is some Kitsch Flamingo. And if you know color theory and stuff like that, usually pinks and greens are, if they are painted on top of each other or mixed together, are going to give you a brown. But because I use such a light background and I'm using a very light hand with painting, it's actually sitting on top of the color. You can still see it underneath. You can still see that bundled sage and that Shabby shutters underneath, but I used a really light color. I am not trying to move the color too much, because if you disrupt it, you know, it is going to reactivate your color and eventually you will get mud. So now I'm going to put some picked raspberry on top of that. That's just to add a little bit of shadowing and shading, and I'm kind of just pouncing that color in there. It's going to sit on top of there nicely. These pinks are much darker than those greens that I chose. That's another reason why they're just sitting on there pretty nicely. But again, if you play around too much, you're going to end up getting mud. So we'll just do a little bit more, and then that's going to be it for our plant itself. I will bring in some gathered twigs for our dirt, and that looks nice over the top of the Shabby shutters and the bundled sage also. You can still see some of that green underneath. And if you wanted, you could paint or add some shadowing and shading to your plants themselves using some painting and using a darker color, but I'm going to use a stencil. I've got my peeled paint sitting up there, as you can see in that upper right hand corner. We are going to stencil over the top of our stamped image. So pouncing a little bit more color so it looks like we've got some dirt. And this is where I bring in that Tiki Squares stencil. And I'm using a very tiny blender. This is one of those mini ink blenders, mini, I don't know what they call it exactly. But it's a tiny ink blender from the Distress line. And I'm just kind of inking up that color over the top of what I have stamped. And so when I pull this away, you're going to see that there is a pattern to our plant now, and also the dirt. And I really think that's fun. That's super fun to do. Looks kind of weird right now, but I am going to fussy cut that out. This only took me a couple of minutes, and I'm not being super careful. I am leaving a bit of a border around the plant. So you'll see here when I'm done, it only took me a couple minutes to fussy cut around that. And it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough for this card. It looks pretty cute in the end. And if you want, you can save that background, what's left of it, for other pieces if you wanted. All right, so we'll finish up our fussy cutting, and I'm leaving the bottom because we're going to attach that down to our gatefold. Before I move on to that, we're going to grab in that peeled paint again and use that mini ink blender, and we're just going to add that to the edges. That's going to ground this a little bit more because it's darker down there at the bottom. And I am happy with how that turned out. So now I've got 2 pieces of cardstock. I've used a light blue and a green. We've cut that down to 11 inches by 4 1/4, and then we're scoring that at 5 1/2. So these would look like top folding A2 sized cards. It will be A2, but it is going to be a gatefold, so we're going to end up overlapping these. So the same with the green, score that at 5.5. We're going to cut that green one down though, because I want the plant to be most of the background, if that makes sense. So it'll sit on top of there. But before I attach anything, I want to grab out another stencil. I love how many stencils Miss Ink Stamps has. She has so many, and it's such an extensive line that I thoroughly enjoy mixing and matching. This Night Sky one is one of my favorites, but there are so many great stencils. I don't even have them all, but I definitely love them all. And it's super fun to do backgrounds like going over something that you've already painted or colored or stenciled before. I love to combine them. It's super fun. All right, so we've made our cloudy background here. That's going to be our sky because we're making a scene. I'll clean up my mess, and then I'm going to attach down my green panel to the inside of my blue panel. So this is what's going to make it the gatefold. And then we'll just make sure that that green piece is actually nice and scored, so it'll close well. And then we can stamp our sentiment, which says, "Don't grow up, it's a trap." This will be a fun birthday card to send to one of my nephews. They're a little bit older now, so I think they'll appreciate this. And then I'm going to stamp out the flies onto some white cardstock, and we're going to fussy cut those out also. I want to make these flies look like they are floating or flying through the air and not really attached to anything. So in order to do that, I'm bringing in some acetate, and I'm just going to trim that acetate down using my guillotine trimmer. You really can't see it, and so you got to be careful where you put your acetate because you could lose it super easily. You can't see it even on this. So I put the one so I don't lose it onto my card, and then I'm putting a little bit of glue on the top of each one of those pieces of acetate, and I'll attach down one of the flies. We'll trim this one down a little bit, and then we'll attach another fly to that other piece. It's so funny because it looks like I'm not doing anything but just sticking glue down on my glass mat because you really can't see that acetate. And then our last fly will attach down to the last piece of acetate that I have, just using again some more of that liquid glue. And then we can take our little flies and we can attach them to our plant. So we're going to just glue those behind our plant to make them look like they are flying around. I got the kids a Venus flytrap once when they were younger. It didn't last very long because we didn't have a lot of flies in the house. And trying to catch a fly and stick it in there, that was a whole thing. But it was super fun to watch it for the little while we had it. I'm also not very good with plants, so there you go. All right, now we're going to glue down our colored piece to our gatefold green. And there's my cat Miles saying hi right up on the microphone. I decided to leave that in. All right, so we've glued that down. That's actually not going to finish off our card just yet. We do want to stamp something on the inside, but look at how cool that looks. What a fun gatefold. So here's where I bring in that everyday sentiments. There's lots of great sentiments in there and good for anything. So I'm going to stamp down happy birthday, and then I do have one of the flies. We're just going to stamp that a couple of times on the inside also. And now that's going to finish off our card. I really love how this turned out. This is so much fun. Underpainting and all that. It just turned out to be a fun card for me. So I hope you like it. If you do, hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And big thanks for sticking around, watching the video, using my affiliate links. All those things help me to continue making videos. I appreciate you. And I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.